As we move forward, we have the first plenary panel session of the 16th edition of the CII Mutual Fund Summit. The panel session will discuss upon evolving investor preferences, existing distribution versus digital theme. The title of the panel is Will Digital Engagement Be the Mainstay? The panel will be moderated by Mr. Neeraj Choksi, founder and joint managing director, NJ India. The panel members, the esteemed panel members for this particular panel are Mr. Imtiazur Rahman, Chief Executive Officer, UTI Mutual Fund, Mr. Saurabh Nanavati, Chief Executive Officer, Invesco Mutual Fund, Mr. Anuj Kumar, Managing Director, Computer Age Management Services, CAMS, Mr. Ravi Menon, Chief Executive Officer, HSBC Asset Management Limited, and Mr. Dhruv Mehta, Chairman, Foundation of Independent Financial Advisors, FIFA. May I now request Mr. Choksi to start off with the proceedings of the discussion, please. Over to you, Mr. Choksi.
Yeah. Good afternoon and a warm welcome. First of all, my sincere thanks to Mr. Sandeep Sikka, Chairman of the CII Mutual Fund Committee for the summit, and of course the team of CII, Mr. Prashad, Mr. Rajiv Mishra, and all. I think all the stalwarts are there in the panel, and it's a big task for me to moderate this session. But yes, I think after the COVID period, digital has picked up by leaps and bounds. But when we talk about digital, I would just like to start with asking this question. Maybe Mr. Imtiaz may take the question first. How do we define the digital engagement space? Because there are several elements when it comes to digital engagement, from customer acquisition, transaction, servicing. So how do you define this, and what according to you is the most important thing?
Thank you, Neeraj Bhai, and thanks CII for giving me this opportunity. Good afternoon to all of you. My dear friends are there on the panel. Neeraj Bhai, before I start, I have to say that the topic of this discussion and the starting point is existing distribution versus digital. So first of all, my view is there's no word like versus. Everything has to coexist. So it is very important that things coexist. Digital is now a movement, and it is not stoppable. And therefore, as a mutual fund player or asset manager, whether it is for the distributor or for the AMC or for any other platform, the COVID has proved that we don't have a choice but to go for the digital drive. So for AMC, it's very important for us that we create an ecosystem which supports all the stakeholders for the customer acquisition, for delivery of our advices, and to support the transactions efficiently. It's very important for us to have an ecosystem. For our distributor, now there is an age group or there is a life cycle of any human being. So for example, the millennium or the Zillennium Z group people, which has got an age group of 18 to 25 and the 35, they would preferably go towards the online or digital. But my take is the people of my age group will though use digital, but always go for the advice. So concerns today is, will digital remove the human touch? And answer is no. Both aspects will coexist, Neeraj Bhai. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Very well said that digital, and it can't be digital versus physical. It has to coexist, and there will be the digital movement. While it may not stop, but the physical, the real world where the contact is there, it will continue to remain. So I think I would like to move to Mr. Saurabh Nanavati ji. Sir, we understand that the delivery of advice is extremely critical as far as uh, the solicitation of the units of mutual funds take place. So how do you see the delivery of advice in the physical versus the digital world?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, CII and Neeraj bhai, for the opportunity. I think let's look at what's happening in the marketplace today. So one key significant change happening is the change in investor demographics. You have existing investors, which are now being replaced by millennials. Millennials are obviously much more open to investments and have different ideas, perspective about money. However, one thing is certain, that they are much more digitally savvy than the earlier generation. We all agree that the investment guidance, investment advice is critical. However, the advice and delivery methods will change. A one-size-fits-all approach may not work, and you will need to keep in mind the profile of the customer you're dealing with in terms of how you're servicing them. For example, an older client may want a physical meeting when you want to impart advice, while there may be a group of millennial clients who you can address at the same point of time, 50 of them on the same Zoom call, and provide them an investment call, and they will happily sort of accept it, and they will be more receptive to a larger group being present, so that they can even discuss amongst themselves when it comes to the investment advice they are receiving. So, to my point, that one size fits all may not work, but digital will play a very key role in providing advice to clients on investments. It's up to the distributor to to what extent does he want to utilize that medium, and what is his client segment he's looking at in terms of providing that advice to.
Saurabh, I would just like to understand that you said that one size doesn't fit everyone. I agree, but the delivery of digital advice, because how that particular thing will work, because when one is engaged with a customer, you understand the the psyche of the customer, and advice happens based on, and a lot of the behavioral aspect are also very important when one is giving a plan, investment plan, or a asset allocation plan. How does, I mean, there are definitely models through which one can create a portfolio, but will it really work, or how I mean, what's your feel on that?
So Neeraj bhai, a very fair point. Look, you could be an HNI investor who wants a physical meeting, who wants advice on a one-on-one basis. You may need to go to him, meet up with him, explain the asset allocation and why you are suggesting something to him. In this case, what will happen digitally is perhaps, the models you prepare, the presentations you prepare, which can make a bigger impact in terms of convincing the client. On the flip side, you can have a completely different business model. You can be a new age technology company or a new age distributor who fundamentally will say that, look, I am not looking at that HNI investor. I'm looking at hundreds of retail investors. And for them, I am preparing standard models where I am basically classifying you as a conservative investor, a medium risk-taking investor, or an aggressive investor. And I've created these profiles. I have basically put in my recommendations basis all my knowledge. And then it is up to each and every retail client which comes on his platform to select what category he is in and take that advice. So I think in both these cases, digital will play a key role. And it's up to you to adopt, the ideal model, what suits your business model and your clientele.
Right. Thank you, Saurabh bhai. If I take this question further to Dhruv bhai is one of the most prominent distributors come advisors, and you have a huge experience. Uh, as Saurabh bhai rightly said that you have to classify the customers and your business model. But normally we see a lot of herd mentality when investment takes place, when markets are doing well, particularly on the retail side. So how this digital model will ensure that the right decision is taken? We talk about long-term investments, stay invested. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Neeraj bhai. Thank you, CII, for giving this opportunity. Good to see everyone. I think I will just start with a statement that it's a famous statement of Nicholas Negroponte. And this was something which he said in the late 90s. Whatever can be digitalized will be digitalized. And I think actually we are seeing that happening now, accelerated in the pandemic. So what one could not have visualized, in the 90s, I would not have visualized, the sort of online streaming and all happening. And therefore, I think I would start by saying that whatever can be digitalized is going to be digitalized. And all aspects, whether it be of manufacturing, whether it be of service, everything is going to get digitalized. But what is something which will not get digitalized, I think, is the managing of emotions. I think our business has two components. One is the complete intellectual part, the whole investment framework, how decisions are made, how asset allocation is made. And the second is ensuring that the client, sticks to the plan. I think that's where that's the most difficult part, where, managing human emotions. And therefore, coming to the point that in case of the retailization and where digitalization increases the large number of retail customers coming into the system, I think we are going to see even more maybe excessive swings in terms of fear and greed. Because the social media is so powerful that an idea that catches on, people just lap on. And that's what we've seen in, the Bitcoin space. People don't understand maybe what is Bitcoin, But because everybody in his circle or social circle is investing in Bitcoin, the investment starts. So I think digitalization is enabling, what they say in US, the Robin Hood movement has led to the democratization of the markets. Even in something like the US, they are saying that investing in stock markets has become democratized because of the Robin Hood movement. And digitalization, as far as in India, in terms of mutual fund, will make it very easier for onboarding of new investors. As we get a large number of new investors coming, I think the social media and that movement of herd mentality will get, the excesses will continue to happen on both sides. And therefore, I think a greater responsibility, I think, in terms of the intermediation, there will be a larger number of investors who will do it themselves because of the availability of a lot of information. There are tools by which, investors can make the decisions on their own. At the same time, a large number of investors would look for assistance to make their decisions. And I think that's where a greater challenge will be in terms of, guiding them, making the right decisions, or rather, I think, is guiding and not making, the wrong decisions. There'll be a greater this thing in terms of, I think today, if you see in the last 5-6 months, it's so easy. It had been so easy to sell equity funds. Any retail investor coming in is coming to invest in the equity markets because of the last year returns. And that's the time that the role of advice, which also to my mind is that can some of it be digitalized? I'm sure that there'll be tools to, over time will evolve that those tools or digital tools help us in giving some flash signal to the client or some pop-up, Ukraine has happened, don't worry, long term is good, some pop-up. So I think even, I don't know, but at the moment, I think that the first phase is where all the scientific is getting digitalized. I think it's going to be much more difficult in terms of digitalizing human behavior, the chemistry between the client and the advisor or the AMC. And so that's, I think, as Mr. Imtiaz said, that, I think both will coexist, digital and real.
So, Dhruva, you said whatever can be digitalized will be digitalized, and probably that is on the digital platform, because we can digitalize this conference. But having said that, I think what I get from you is a hybrid kind of a model will be the most suitable model for a consumer, because the transactional element and other element can be digitalized, but at the same time, when it comes to making an investment decision, a personal touch, because it is driven by emotions, a personal touch can really make a difference, because ultimately it is not about digitalization when one is investing. It is about how you do with your investment. That is the most important thing. So whether while all the models will coexist, which is a model where the success of an investor is the most likely? If I have to reframe that question, then what I understand is a hybrid kind of a model where the element of advice is more personal, maybe more successful. Dhruv.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you say, I would say, just say an example that even a Virat Kohli needs a, coach. And I think investing requires a coach. Even a very successful investors do need that sort of, or somebody to help him out, So I think even pure investing is a combination of science and art. Just by looking at the past, if alpha could be created, you would not need fund managers. But I think there is an element of in pure investing also, while everything could be broken down to numbers, but there is an element in terms of art as to looking into the future. So I think if you look in terms of simple thing like cars, you had the evolution of the car, then you had, drivers, and now we are moving to driverless cars. Correct. So, it's a long way there, but I think to reach the driverless cars, human behavior is cannot be completely digitalized.
Correct.
Okay. Everything is not a scientific. Your action and reactions are not completely, in a zero or one mechanism.
Yes, very rightly said, sir. Isaac Newton once said that I can measure the frequency of sound, but not the frequency of human behavior. So, moving ahead to Anuj, the largest RTA in the country. What kind of new models which are emerging you foresee that, and how they are different from the traditional models, and what is your advice to the distribution fraternity to continue to grow their business?
Thank you. Thanks, Neeraj bhai. Thanks, CII, for having me over in this conference. So, Neeraj bhai, what I'll do is I'll perhaps talk a little about the environment and then get into the specific answer to the question you are seeking. One, there have been, in our view, two mega trends, two big trends which are out at play in the last maybe 3 to 4 years, not a much longer time. The first is the willingness of the investors to gravitate to the capital markets. And I think while we can say it is somewhere interlinked to digital, our view is it is purely behavioral, which means a 23 or 24-year-old person in Kanpur or Gorakhpur or Nasik wants to start doing F&O trading or wants to start investing in crypto is a purely voluntary decision. And that trend has been building for the last 3 or 4 years. The statistics are in front of us. A lot of these are people that we describe as millennials, digital natives, all of that. The second megatrend, I would say, is a more digital megatrend related to our industry, where whether it is the AMCs, sellers, platforms, distributors, RTAs, just everyone has adopted digital in a big way across various parameters and various activities, and I'll get into the specifics. I think that on the digital front, there are 4 or 5 key components. Selling and customer acquisition is certainly one. Onboarding and transactions is the other. And then the third is this whole thing about advisory and relationship building. I believe on the onboarding and transaction front, the industry has done very well and to our own benefit. We've really done well. Transaction-wise, almost 85-86% of the transactions today, this is not mandated, initiated transactions are happening electronically and digitally. Prior to COVID, this was 73%. So COVID has added some heft, but COVID is not the reason. It is not the reason because we had reached 73% even before that. And that I think is just a vindication of all the things that we have done collectively. Onboarding is still, I would say, almost 50-50 because while 75% of the onboarding is happening electronically, 40% of the traffic comes from the platforms. That's 100% electronic. What perhaps pulls the numbers down a little, and this is not just the this is not just the MFDs, even the banks are still at about 50-55%. Can we do better? Can we improve that a little bit? The answer is yes. But collectively, the industry today is onboarding 75% of its new investors digitally, which is a great figure. And again, worth giving ourselves a pat on the back. When you look at advice and engagement, so how do you engage? How do you advise? My personal view is that advice was important in the physical world. Advice and relationship is equally important in the digital world, but there are a couple of caveats. The first caveat is the emergence of this do-it-yourself investor. Now, who's the do-it-yourself investor? He's the guy who's trying to do everything on the phone. Whether he's booking a marriage venue or he's looking for a holiday destination, he's a do-it-yourself person. And therefore, my view is that to wrench him away from that style for our product category is not easy. It's not easy because that is the way he is used to doing things. That is the same person who's doing crypto and F&O trading without really knowing what he's doing, and perhaps he's committing a mistake, but he's a risk taker. He's doing that at the age of 24 without the information and guidance that he needs. Will he be successful? Will he not be successful? Time will tell. But that's one part. The other is that there is still a very large fraction. I mean, after what we have done, after the coming of platforms and everything else, look at the statistics. We only have 3 crore and some change investors. We don't have a year in which we brought in more than 50 lakh unique investors into the industry after the platforms came. Before the platforms came and after the platforms came, I don't think the numbers changed significantly. It has not gone to double, for example. So collectively, we can do a lot more. A lot of our investors place 1%, 2%, 3% of their savings with us, which means that a large part of his savings, despite all the exposure, all the storytelling, is still sitting in some other instrument. 50% of our investors have invested only in mutual fund, one mutual fund house, which means they're not diversified. 55% never came in through the systematic route, haven't come in that way yet. And a large part do not have the best performing mutual fund scheme, which means whichever mutual fund they're sitting with, they have either the second or the third or the fourth best performing scheme, not the most best performing scheme. Now, this is all counterintuitive. Why? Because if information is so easily available, if advisory is all electronic, he can go and look at curated lists. Why isn't he doing all this himself? And my belief is that electronic input and content will continue proliferating. Somebody has to have him cross the line. He's got to cross the line. He's got to make those important decisions. He's got to commit 10, 15, 20% of his savings and not 1 and 2% of his savings. only digital content or digital advisory will not get him there. And like I said, the caveat is that a lot of them will not seek out an advisor themselves. He's not sought out a holiday advisor. He's not sought out a event advisor. So he will not seek out. It is our job to get to him. And how will he get influence? Again, my belief is that we need hyper personalized content, almost suiting him. Nothing generic, nothing broad, nothing which is for the age group saying this is for the 25 to 35 age group. We know you work for XYZ technology company, you must be making 10 lakh rupees a year. That will not work. And then we will need a lot of storytelling, a lot of curated content in order to influence the person. But there will be masses of people outside the do-it-yourself set. There will be people who are in the do-it-yourself set, who've just gone through bad experiences, who are quitting those industries where they came in. And all of them have to be sought out, and all of them have to be influenced in a very personalized, one-to-one relationship building exercise. That's my personal view. Can we do it in a current style? Maybe not. Maybe we've got to just imagine this in a little different way and spend a lot of more selling time. And selling time is expensive for everyone. It is expensive for the distributors, expensive for the EMC. The industry is not engineered or architected to say that your first sale will happen in the 6th meeting. The 6th meeting is in the 6 months. Continue investing, keep continuing to invest till you get the result. So that is something which is at the foundation which we as an industry have to solve. So just to sum it up, fundamentally, a lot of do-it-yourself investors, they will continue doing what they're doing. Some of them will be successful, some will fail in their ventures, and there'll be a large set outside of this. Even if we started or continue to get those 50 lakh investors, in like 2032, we will still have only 7 or 8 crore. That is not the way this industry wants to head, Neeraj bhai, right? So there is a lot to be done on the personal style, advisory, guidance, personalized content, curated content, storytelling, all of that will be important. And therefore, I concur with the view that both will coexist. We have to change our styles and think about how to invest more in that single investor and bring him across the line.
Yes, so we're getting concurrence on the view that both will coexist and still a lot to do. What Anuj said is there are going to be customers who are in a DIY framework, and they will get platforms to service these kind of investors, and they will continue to do. Whether they'll be successful or not is something which certainly time will tell. But beyond that also, there is a plethora of investors where one-on-one kind of advice or a digital mechanism has to be worked out in an efficient way, where it is both cost effective and time effective to touch base this investor. So there is no one answer, but yes, one will have to find out innovative ways, create content, create curated content and things like that. That's what I gather from you, Anuj. Yeah. Moving ahead to Mr. Ravi Mananji. Sir, what on the manufacturing side, how digital can play a role? Because you've already now acquired on a business as well, and HSBC also is into using of technology in a big way globally. So what are your thoughts on that aspect? Slightly different from the distribution debate, but since it is a part of the digital way, so how in manufacturing the digital way forward looks like?
Right. Thank you, Neeraj bhai, and thank you, CII, for having me on this panel, and great to see everyone, hopefully next year in person. Mm-hmm. The way we look at it, the way I look at it, and perhaps continuing with the same discussion, mm-hmm. all of this is a continuum, right? 10, 15 years ago, when perhaps the basic computer was used as a medium of dissemination of information from a manufacturer to an investor or a distributor, we just called it a computerization of a process. Today, we are calling it a digitalization of a process, largely because of the arrival of mobile technologies as the differentiating factor. And this will continue. I think to your question, as a manufacturer, and I think at the hopefully, the center in terms of various stakeholder engagements, our role becomes perhaps most critical. And becomes most critical because the management of funds, the dissemination of information, the servicing of all stakeholders. And for us in particular, we treat our distribution partner as a client. And therefore, if I do not take care of this very significant constituent for us, the end investor will never get to see the benefits. So the way we have approached it, and I suspect pretty much every manufacturer has approached it, is to look at every process with one simple metric. And that one metric is, will this improve that end investor experience? And as I said in my definition of the client, it includes the distribution partner as well as the end investor. So any change which is going to improve that experience is an area of technology, digitization, computerization, metaverse of the future, Web3 of the future, is where we have to invest. And that is the journey which we are all in. Some have perhaps greater resources, global resources, limited resources, but that is the end game for all of us. So when we are here in this position of responsibility to take care of our enterprise at this point of time, what is it that I can do to help improve that end investor experience? That's the way I look at it, very simplistically, in whatever terminology that we may look to use. And if you see the changes which have taken place in the last 5 years, and clearly from the India perspective, because the India stack is coming, be it mobile and smartphone technologies, the unique identifier, the Aadhaar card, the regulatory framework to support this, the legal framework to support the regulatory framework. I think all of them have to fall into place, and they are falling into place. Just today, I was speaking to my colleague, our general counsel for HSBC Group in India, and he was making a very interesting observation. Under the current Data Act, whichever legal acts those are, there are only 5 legal areas which require a vetting signature, just 5. Which says, agar power attorney you have to sign, sorry, that is a vetting. You cannot do a digital signature so far on that. If there's an encumbrance, it's an immovable property. But everything else today, the legal framework is permitting you to basically digitize this. And therefore, this translates into investor experience being far superior, because everyone recognizes that paper is a big hindrance from doing it. Making dual payments via check is a big hindrance. So I think we got all the building blocks. We got the India stack, we got the regulatory framework, encouraging more digital, encouraging more online, and you got the legal framework. Now, when it comes to at the core of what we as the manufacturers can do, providing the level of, this is my fund house, this is my scheme, this is the process, providing that level of transparency and disseminating that information. Now we can call that information in terms of the advice which goes out to the end investor. How is that to be communicated? And clearly digitization is helping in a big way. The platforms which are coming in a big way. But I'm reminded of one thing to your question, Neeraj Bhai, about how will this play out? And we have all agreed there are different individuals. I don't even slot them by age group, millennials, etc. There can be people at my age who are just very comfortable, don't want to meet another human being and will go ahead and do it. There can be a young person who cannot do this on his own, wants an advisor to come in. So let's lot them more by personality types rather than by alphabets or any other characterization. But about, say, 5 years ago, about 4 years ago in the UK, when they came up with this big distribution versus advisory regulation framework, and they carried out a review, the number of people who had to move into the DIY model because the distribution numbers reduced became very large. And therefore, the wealth managers, etc., created a robo-advisory framework. And a robo-advisory framework, by its very nature, will be templated either by behavioral patterns, age, or some other characteristic. The experience was, on the whole, fairly satisfactory. But when the regulator did a review, and they said, how's the experience? Good, performance, everything good. Is there any one thing which you like? And the standard response is, I would like at least one human intervention. The fund which I've selected, before I press that button and go ahead and make that investment, I want someone to pat my back or tap me and say, okay, go ahead. So it really means that it doesn't matter. We all need, in whatever we do, some kind of endorsement, reassurance that what we are doing is okay. And the community of people who do not, as Anuj mentioned, that even Virat Kohli needs a coach, is very, very few, right? All of us need that particular direction, that guidance, saying that you're okay. And therefore, my view is, in the foreseeable future, all of us have to make that investment in improving that customer investor experience. This will, however, still need a great deal of guidance, support, advice to individuals. We are still only 3 crore, just 3 crores of unique investors. At a minimum, we had agreed in our industry body in AMFI that we should be reaching 10 crores. And that, frankly, has been a struggle. And the only way we can get that conversion is by building and strengthening that distribution community to reach out to the widest set of investors. As you're aware, very recently, through the regulatory sandbox, and I see a lot of those kind of things happening. AMFI is experimenting with bringing in a large number of interns into this model, but we'll see how that works. But those are the experiments which will have to continue. Again, from an HSBC experience, we are investing in a big way in Asia. But if you do a Google search about our Asia wealth plans, it's a very significant hiring. So there's technology and tablets and digital and everything else. But with that is a statement that we'll be hiring X thousand number of people to take that message across, because it is still, perhaps relative to insurance, maybe something more easy to convert savings into investments on a relative basis. But it is still not something where a human being wakes up in the morning and says, "Aaj to ye fund kharidna hi hai." It still needs someone to pick up the phone, reach out to them, guide them. And as long as that sentiment continues, I do not see a change taking place where things just become so completely digitized with no human intervention and things working apace. So I definitely agree with all my fellow panelists about that hybrid model continuing, but the need for us to invest into this remains mandatory for all of us.
Excellent. Vijay, I want to ask this question to all the AMC CEOs that everyone is talking about investing in digital. Digital is the way forward. Having said that, there will continue to remain a hybrid model where there is a human touch is required wherever it is. Now, what are your thoughts on creating the number of branches? Because there are several asset managers who are opening branches now. How can, is there any way through which by use of technology that can get reduced, or what are your thoughts on that?
So may I take it first, Neeraj bhai?
Yeah, in any order, in any order.
Okay. First of all, Neeraj bhai, as you know, and many folks know, that we are a retail-based organizations, almost 60 years in the business, and we have a deep reach. And so our model is, yes, we have branch offices, or we have a business our development offices in various parts of the country. I would like to assure you that we are not closing it down. This is my assurance to you. I'm not sure about the expansion at this particular point of time, but the new formula which AMFI is designing about in terms of the IFAs is a very, very good model. So Neeraj bhai, if I recollect, couple of years back, probably it was the December 18 or 19 in Varanasi, where your team had projected that we need the 500,000 IFAs against the 50,000 IFAs. So if you see the number of IFAs today, is only 25,000 of them are active. Even if we take 70,000 or 60,000 IFA, for every 17,000 prospective investors, we have only one IFA available, because it is estimated that 14 crore folks will be the new middle income group. So therefore, it will be again a hybrid model, which we call, or which BCG or McKinsey has now coined a phygital. So phygital will exist, and we will continue to have not a large office, but one-man office. So what we are doing internally in UTI, that our concept is to have a virtual branch office to support IFAs and distributors while sitting in Mumbai digitally, and while also having a presence across the length and breadth of the country. So I would like to give assurance to you and all panel members that we are not closing down of branch, and on sustainable basis it will continue. Neeraj bhai.
Yeah, but certainly more and more training and other things will happen digitally. At the same time, the physical presence will also absolutely help the distribution community to take the business forward. Saurabh bhai, your views on the same?
So look, I agree with what Imtiaz just said. You just have to look at it a bit contextually. If you are an old asset management company and you have existing branches, you may be keeping it and now using staff a bit differently than what you were using that branch before for. If I am a new age asset manager who's going to start business from scratch today, I may have a completely different business model altogether. I may actually invest a lot in creating the virtual setup, which Imtiaz again spoke of, and perhaps not have physical branches, but a virtual setup would be more convenient. So it really depends on which stage of business you are in and how you are assessing the requirements at that point of time.
Excellent. So it again depends on your business model, at what stage of business one is. But at least for a new entrant, maybe he can look at a larger digital kind of a footprint than a combination of both physical and digital. Yeah, excellent. Raviji, what are your plans, like you as HSBC, your thoughts?
Neeraj, from our perspective, we are putting our money where our mouth is. We've announced this acquisition, and one very significant factor of the acquisition is a increase of our geographical presence by 5 to 6 times over what we have presently.
Correct.
So we are very firmly of the view that having a physical presence around the country is critical. And even more than what we have acquired, we are already making plans to significantly enhance that in 2023. So the scale and size will depend on each location, but we are very clear that we want to be in as many locations around the country to the extent possible.
So physical is not avoidable while digital technologies would be used, but at the same time, the touch points will definitely continue to be there.
I think you make a very good point in terms of that hybrid combination, particularly when it comes to training and programs of that kind, which today we can get anyone, anywhere in the world and speak to the entire community around the country altogether, which was perhaps something which was very difficult to achieve in the past. So clearly, all the video conferencing engagements which we have learned in the last 2 years because of COVID is really helping in that regard. But having a physical presence is absolutely critical from our perspective.
Sure, great. Anujji, coming to you, you do a lot of data analytics, as you were sharing some numbers in the previous answer as well. I just wanted to understand that the penetration of direct plans versus the regular plans, the AUMs have crossed maybe more than 40%. Is digital in any way helping the enhancement of the direct plans, or do you foresee any different trend? Why? I mean, it's more HNI centric or institutional. And on the retail side, is there any reversal of trend which is being observed? I mean, that could be a very, very interesting observations, because now we have a long time, maybe it's 7, 8, 9 years since the inception of direct plans.
Neeraj bhai, what the data says is that trend is continuing. The trend is not reversing. And I'll just give you one example. We always used to talk about an arbitrage between T30 and B30, saying behaviors are different, sales effort is more intense in B30. But now, because in the country, internet and smartphone penetration is practically the same across the country. I mean, leave aside the very small hamlets and towns, but otherwise B30 and T30 are not different. We see that the climb up of contribution of direct plans, electronic digital transactions, electronic onboarding is perhaps converging completely. And I think when you just put this together with the first mega trend that I spoke about, that the hesitancy to participate in risk instruments, FNO, direct equity, mutual funds, equity mutual funds, crypto, etc., is now being propagated through all these platforms, through the availability. And because it does not matter whether I'm sitting in T30 or B30, I have exactly the same exposure to the same content. I'm reading the same websites. I will see the same YouTube videos. And therefore, I'm getting influenced the same. And to that extent, these people are getting into the market. And my guess is a lot of them are do-it-yourself. They're young, they're do-it-yourself. They will go one way. Either they'll be successful and continue doing all that, or they'll be unsuccessful, they'll burn their fingers and they'll fall off. And then we will have to bring them back into the mainstream. But to answer your question, the contribution of direct plans continues to grow.
No, that's right. The contribution of direct plan continues to increase, but when it comes to the number of investors, the retail investors, there are two aspects to it. One is in terms of the AUM, where large investors will certainly look at the expense ratio and they will think to move on to that. But at the same time, how do you see the trend of a retail investor? A retail investor sometimes are not even aware of what is a direct plan or a regular plan. They are do it your own, but that doesn't mean that they are so savvy about all these things. It depends on the platform on which they go and make a transaction. And after making that transaction, once in a direct plan, do we see any such trend that they may again invest in a regular plan as well? That was probably the question which I was trying to ask.
Not much. I don't think we've seen this data. I'll again give you one line of statistic. Okay. If you go back 5 years, there were no platforms. All the investors were brought in by banks, NDs, and distributors, small distributors.
Right.
40% of new PANs in the industry are coming off the platforms, and you know what the platforms sell, right? So that trend is just getting accentuated and has brought us to a certain level. So no, I don't think there is a perceptible trend of, I will still look, I don't have the data offhand, but I don't think there's a perceptible trend of entering through direct and then coming through intermediated. I'll still look at this.
Okay, thank you. Dhruv, the last question for you is, we've discussed all this about the digital and all. What is your advice to the distributors, particularly the ones who are in the physical mode? What is your advice to the distributors? Dhruv, are you here?
Sorry. I think we all have to embrace digitalization. I am a firm believer, I think, what I said, that whatever can be digitalized is going to be digitalized. So as mutual fund distributors, we must prepare that everything around us in the whole ecosystem is going to get digitalized. So while investing is also getting sort of, more and more scientific. Our whole function as a mutual fund distributor is in terms of first is customer acquisition. Unless we embrace digital technology, social media, that is the way to, going ahead is to get customers while we continue doing our traditional by way of references or by conducting of seminars. And because that itself, I think the number of customers is so large. If you have to move from 3 crores to 20 crores, people are across various segments. There are people who, while having a mobile phone, so today, like partner Rupa, she had gone to a police station. They are all savvy, they have customers, but they want somebody to come and talk to them.
Correct.
Kahan invest karu? So I'm saying that rapid scale is going to happen with the help of digitalization. So that is what we need to embrace. Second is in terms of as a mutual fund distributor, I think digital enables you to have a lot of tools, be open to that. The third, I think, is the trend of, commissions and advice. I think all distributors should be cognizant that both are going to be there. And as the regulations now, enabling the customer to choose both the options, I think we should prepare as distributors to be able to offer both the options to the investor. Let the investor decide what model he wants to adopt. But we as distributors should have both the options available with us to give the customer what he wants. And I think
It probably is restricted by the regulator as of now, Dhruv bhai. So,
for individuals, I think either if you want to grow your practice, then you corporatize, I think.
Correct.
And the fourth, I think, is that as distributors, I think we need to strengthen our, I think, the whole investor experience. As mentioned, that, customer needs some sort of physical touch, some touch point. So how we in our offering strengthen that piece, that you give that comfort to the customer. And that's the whole side on the EQ part. We have to, as distributors, upskill our knowledge in terms of communication and relationship building.
yeah, so one will have to add value to whatever you are doing through the
Yes.
communication digital mode in terms of the quality of advice. Because competition is there, this is necessary. Until the time you are able to do that and justify the value which you are adding to a customer, I think certainly that one doesn't have to worry, and business will continue to grow. So I think we are now at the end of our session, and I thank CII. I thank all the panelists, Mr. Imtiaz Rahman, Mr. Saurabh Nanavati, Mr. Ravi Menon, Mr. Anuj Kumar, and Dhruv bhai, Mr. Dhruv Mehta. I think you have been phenomenal. You have been stalwarts in the industry, and I think what we summarize is that hybrid kind of a model is required. While digital is a key thing, is necessity, but there is a need of a personal touch also when it comes to investments, when it comes to mutual fund distribution, whether it is at a distributor level or an asset management level. There has to be a combination of it, and based on one's business model, one may go ahead. So with that, once again, thank you CII, Sandeep Sikka ji, Mr. Prasad Parthe ji, Rajiv Mishra ji. Thank you very much, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chau.